Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today we have a whole bunch of new cards. Card reveal season is full swing right now. We're getting a bunch of cards every single day, so expect a bunch of these videos, and I hope you like them, and I hope you watch all of them several times. Thank you in advance. New first card is a new rogue card with Rush. It's a 3/5, and the battle cry gives you a random minion from another class to your hand. Now, this card is quite strong. It is a pretty fair card, I would say, in terms of Rogue having it. Rogue typically wants the tempo end of things, and this would be much better if it didn't have the effect and cost like 4 mana or had less stats and costs 3 mana. But as it is, it's just a solid card. It has a very powerful effect. Having, an additional card draw targeted towards minions can be very nice. And it's a class minion. So that's pretty important. You're not getting a neutral minion. On average, class minions are stronger than neutral minions. That's why there's all those, lol power creep posts on Hearthstone Reddit and whatnot over the years. Well, some of them are actually quite correct. But in general, it's the class cards that directly power creep the neutral cards because that's how the game works. So getting a class card is actually pretty valuable. It's almost as good as one card draw, and if you're playing like a rogue with like thief rogue mechanics, it's potentially an activator, so it's potentially better than a card draw. So you pay that extra 1 mana for sometimes, if you design your deck around it, better than one card draw on a pretty good 4 mana card as a base. And that's pretty solid overall. Speaking of solid, the next card, Desert Obelisk, is anything but that. This is possibly the single worst card in the existence of Hearthstone. It's 5 mana, 0/5, and if you control 3 of them, at the end of turn, you'll 5 to a random enemy. Now, if you don't control 3 of them, if you control 1 or 2, they do absolutely nothing. Now, I might eat my words on this one, and if there are some insane copying mechanics, it's possible this will be a not the worst card in Hearthstone card, but as it is right now, it is the worst card in Hearthstone card. It's just really bad. It's just unbelievably bad. Basically, you'd have to kill your opponent on the spot with this, because if you didn't, there's 0/5s for 5, right? Like, if this was supposed to be a card like that, you guys designed, custom Hearthstone type of thing, it would probably cost like 2 mana, maybe 3. No, it costs 5 mana and has no option to defend itself because it has no attack. Because it sucks. But it sucks so spectacularly, it's a card we'll never forget and try to make use of anyway. Next up is the Evil Recruiter. It's a Warlock card, and good thing at that, because if it was a neutral card, I'd lose my mind. It's a 3 mana 3/3, so it's a pretty fairly statted card if you can't meet the requirement of destroying a lackey. Oh, poor lackeys. Well, you get a 5/5, so I guess that's worth it. Just lackeys, right? Whatever. Now, if you do destroy a lackey, lackeys being 1/1s, this will give you a 3 mana 7/7 stat swing. Is that good? I don't need to tell you that's really crazy. That's like completely crazy. This is like a pre-rated 5-star card. It's just, there's no chance this card is bad because this card is completely insane. We've never had a equivalent of 3 mana 7/7 before across 2 bodies, no less, which is actually good when you're playing Warlock, by the way, because Zoo and all that. Yes, it's a little bit conditional, but it ought to be, because that is game-breakingly crazy. Next Warlock card we got is Rift Cleaver. It's a 6 mana 7/5 demon, so the stats kind of suck in terms of their distribution, because you'd kind of want the opposite at the very least. But the battle cry is to destroy a minion, and your hero takes damage equal to its health. So this is an effect that has people wondering. It's like, is that good? You destroy a minion, but do you really want to take that much damage? So the thing is in Hearthstone, particularly in Constructed, is that minions end up hitting your face a lot, particularly if you're a Warlock. So what ends up happening is what Rift Cleaver kills, let's say it's like a 7/7 that he kills and he takes 7 damage. You're like, man, that sucks. It's like 7 damage to kill that thing. Well, here's what happens if you don't play Rift Cleaver. You play your turn without killing the 7/7. The 7/7 hits you in the face. Well, lo and behold, you took that 7 damage anyway. So a lot of the time, just playing Warlock, minions are going to hit you in the face anyway. So taking the damage that you're going to take anyway, but you also get to destroy the minion. That's pretty value if you ask me. I think that's pretty damn strong. I don't know if I'd rate Rift Cleaver 5 stars, pre-rated, before we get into the ratings, that is. But it's certainly a very good card. I probably would rate it 5 stars if the stat distribution was good, but as it stands right now, it's the kind of stat distribution that works because of the tempo swing of you killing a minion, but you can't really put a 6-drop consistently in a zoo deck that doesn't kill your opponent. Can you? Well, we'll give it a try, I suppose. Maybe you can. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and if I am wrong about that, it's probably a really good card. Next up is Bloodsworn Mercenary. It is a warrior epic, 3-cost, 3/3. The battlecry chooses a damage minion and you summon a copy of it. Now, the best way to do this is by utilizing rush minions and getting the tempo off of it right away. The other way is, if you just have a really big thing, you just copy the really big thing. And in doing so, you can probably just win the game straight out. What I'm thinking is, if you have big taunts, and there's certainly some cards that synergize and push that concept in the upcoming Saviors of Uldum expansion, having another big taunt off the battlecry is pretty crazy. This card's power level is just really, really high. We don't quite know the best way to combo out and take advantage of the battlecry, but there's certainly going to be something. You don't get a card this powerful that just doesn't see play whatsoever. This card is just too good to not see play. Next up is Fishflinger. This is the first card I revealed. I do actually think it's pretty solid if you're playing Murlocs. If you're getting an extra Murloc, it's a lot better than your opponent getting an extra Murloc. Because, well, you have Murlocs, you have the synergy. That's kind of the point of playing Murlocs. So Fishflinger is a pretty solid 2-drop for Murloc decks, and somehow, though I don't particularly enjoy the fact, Murloc decks somehow refuse to die. So it'll see some play whenever that Murloc deck ends up rising again, and we have Murloc Shaman right now, so you can bet that's going to be relatively soon. Next up is Tip the Scales. So Tip the Scales is the second card I revealed. Obviously, it's a card that costs a lot of mana for a Murloc deck, and that's the point. The point is that you basically squeeze out your deck and all the Murlocs drop out, so the rest of your draws are pretty decent, I suppose. The way that you'd use this card ideally is probably through Prismatic Lens. If you have generally low-cost cards and you have Prismatic Lens, you might get like a 1-cost or a 2-cost Tip the Scales that you can play on turn 5. If you play it then, you can win the game right away. So that's pretty good. And if you play it later in the game, you can probably win that game because your deck doesn't have any crappy draws left in it. It's kind of like the secret paladin of old mechanics, where you just, get all the garbage out of your deck in the late game and all your draws are pretty good. And suddenly, even though you were playing an aggro deck at the start, well, you can kind of compete with control decks because all your draws are like, 5, 6, 7, 8 drops that just kind of work out so well. Anka the Buried. This is the Rogue Legendary. Blizzard took its sweet time to reveal this one on YouTube, but it was worth it. Battlecry changes the Death Rattle minions in your hand to 1/1, and they cost 1. So basically, Mechthun. Nothing else really needs to be said. It's obviously a really good card in its own right. It's a 5-mana 5/5 with a really strong ability. The thing about Death Rattles is you typically want to kill them. So them going for 1-mana 1/1s, that's fine. Mechthun is a fun mention because even though it's probably not going to be that good of a deck, it's, a thing that people like. People like to play Mechthun, and people hate to play against Mechthun, but people like to play Mechthun. And those people that like to play Mechthun are going to be trying out a deck that involves a 1-mana 1/1 Mechthun in Rogue. And it's certainly going to be an adventure because Rogue spectacularly fails to include control cards required to actually reach that point where you have no cards left in your deck or hand. Now, you might be able to push it out with like a, Myra, draw your whole deck, but that's going to be a little bit tough. Next up is a revival of Secret Mage, featuring Arcane Flak Mage. It's a 2-cost 3/2, so you have to play this and then play a secret, because when you do, you deal 2 damage to all enemy minions, which is crazy. That's an insane effect, all right? So the idea is secrets suck, So we make cards that when you use sucky cards like Secrets, they do really game-breaking things. And that's how we make Secret Mage viable over the years, in fact. And next up, we have another card to support this idea, Cloud Prince. 5 mana, 4/4. It's an elemental, which I guess kind of matters maybe for wild, but probably not. Battlecry, if you already control a secret, you deal 6 damage. That's a fireball. All right. This is pay 1 more mana for a 4/4 attachment to your fireball. That's a big deal. Fireball is something that's included in just about every single mage deck since the beginning of time, and having a large body attached to it for a massive discount, well, that can't go wrong. So secrets are pretty insane. When these cards were revealed, people were already screaming about the wild format because apparently Secret Mage is already a deck there, and I imagine this is relatively strong for that deck, and we'll have to see what it does for standard Secret Mage. Will it be a viable deck? Probably, because these cards are crazy. Splitting Axe. This is a shaman weapon. It's a 4-cost 3/2, so it costs way too much, but when you play it, you summon copies of your totems, which is typically not great. Most totems are not very big. They kind of suck, actually. They're mostly 0/2s. Now, if you can buff those totems, I don't exactly know how you're going to do that because shamans don't have a lot of buffs. Well, this might be really good. The other aspect that you can utilize is Nightmare Amalgam because it is everything, and being everything includes totems. So if you do a Nightmare Amalgam into Splitting Axe and copying no other actual totems, that's a really good play. Now, that alone is not enough to make Splitting Axe a good card, so we'll have to see how many more totem-like things can be copied and summoned, and if it's more than just, Nightmare Amalgam, it might actually end up being a really good card. But as it stands, doesn't seem that game-breaking, so it's probably not going to see a whole lot of constructed play. Whirl Kick Master is a new rogue card. It's a 2-cost 1/2, and you play a combo card, you get a random combo card to your hand. So basically, you play this, you eviscerate your opponent in the face with no other cards in hand, and you proceed to get 3 more eviscerates, resulting in him uninstalling Hearthstone. Now, that's probably not going to happen, but it might happen, and it'll eventually happen because there's a lot of people who play this game, and that'll be hilarious. So, is it a good card? Probably. Combo cards in Rogue are typically very strong, and being able to generate more of them makes this card an imminent threat, and you're probably not going to be in a very good position on the board to deal with anything because the Rogue just played a bunch of combo cards, which again are generally on the powerful side. So that's a pretty strong card. Another Rogue card we have Hooked Scimitar, 3-cost 2/2, combo, gain 2 attack. Is that good? Yep. Is there much to talk about? Nope. It's just good. It's good. Yeah. New mage card, Tortola Pilgrim. The Tortolans are back. This time it's mage only, thankfully. 8-cost 5/5, so the stats suck for the mana cost. That's no surprise. The Tortolan are certainly statistically challenged. Battlecry discovers a copy of a spell in your deck and casts it with random targets. So when I first saw this card, I was thinking, well, if you're playing kind of like the big spell mage of old, you're going to have some pretty sweet options to choose from. And yeah, I guess you would. The main issue with that is the supporting cards for that type of deck are generally no longer in standard. While the spells are, the other cards that push you to build this type of deck are not, which makes it a bit of a challenge for constructing a whole deck around the card. But possibly with the singleton decks coming up, maybe Mage will try to do that. Maybe this will just be a good enough card to utilize in that deck, but will it be good enough to be utilized in others? Maybe. If you make the deck with just big spells, it is a really good card. It's just making that deck and having it work outside of just playing a strong Tortola Pilgrim turn, and that'll be a real challenge. And speaking of real challenges, our last card today is Mogu Cultist. It's a 1-mana 1/1, and if your board is full of these, as the battle cry, that's very important, you summon Highkeeper Ra. What is Highkeeper Ra? Well, Highkeeper Ra comes in the board and just basically kills everything. It's no ancient one, but it's pretty close. It's a 20/20. and he just destroys everything. 20 damage to everything when played. Now, in terms of the base card, Mogu Cultist, the main issue with it is that it is a battle cry. So if you're playing this in Rogue, there are a lot of ways where you can, copy minions and, add them to your deck and add them to your hand, and maybe you can eventually play a full turn of them, possibly even on the same turn. How crazy would that be? The problem is that it's a battle cry. For all the other classes, it's not about copying them so much. Most of the classes have to copy minions. They can't just, generate cards in their deck, generate cards in their hand. Typically have to copy minions. And because it's a battle cry, you can't play the second one and your first one has to live. Your first one has to live. You have to copy it a bunch of times, and then you have to play the second one for the other classes. So basically my point is, this is basically a rogue card. Is it a good card in general? No. Is it a good rogue card? Yeah, possibly. It might be fun. It might be possible. Consistency-wise, I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt it'll be consistent enough to be viable for an actual deck, but the effect is really strong, and if you can get it even close to like 40% success rate, again, playing rogue, that's possibly worth it. Win 40% of the time automatically, and like maybe win because your opponent gets a crap hand, you're playing a tempo deck like 10-15% of the time, bam, deck. So that's possible. We'll have to see. We'll have to see a lot more reveals, and I hope you join us for those as well.